My marriage was over. I knew what I did was wrong, but I did it anyway. I could have said no, but I didn't. I found out later that outside forces intervened, but that doesn't change the fact that I could have avoided all of this if I had only wanted to. My biggest crime? I let my head not mine make the decision for me. Ellie and I had been in love with each other since 7th grade. I was her first and only boyfriend. We dated constantly throughout junior high school, and on graduation day I proposed to her. Ellie said yes, and then we realized it wasn't that simple. Both sets of parents were against us getting married, and it wasn't because my parents didn't like Ellie, it was because her parents didn't like me. It was because they thought we were too young and that we should wait until we were out of college. Ellie's parents worked hard on her, and mine worked equally hard on me, and eventually they got what they wanted. Ellie went to Eastern Michigan to get her degree, and I went to the University of Massachusetts to get mine. We didn't expect this to be a major problem because the two schools were less than 50 kilometers apart. We talked to each other almost every day and saw each other on weekends. But being apart after being together for so long changed our relationship. It was my first time away from Ellie. There was never another girl in my life because Ellie was always there for me. The first 2 months in Michigan were spent figuring out how things were going and settling into a new place. I was constantly talking to Ellie on the phone, but eventually I started to notice that I was acting like a horny young guy who was missing his regular girlfriend with the girls I was taking classes with. Yes, Ellie and I ended our relationship many times. I couldn't resist looking at some of them and wondering if sex with them was different from sex with Ellie. I probably would have done nothing but wonder if some of these girls didn't have questions of their own. It was Monday, and I was at a party at the Delta Omega house, had half a dozen beers, and was feeling pretty chipper when a girl who was in my English literature class pulled me into a corner and started kissing me. I swear to God, she was aggressive from the start. But as a young horny guy, was I going to push her away? No shit! I was wondering what it would be like to kiss you, she said. Are you good in bed? How the hell can you answer a question like that if you're a guy? Only one way. I haven't had any complaints, I said. And it was true because I've only had sex with Ellie and she's never complained. Well, let's just see. And she took my hand and led me into the bedroom. Even though Ellie was my only experience, I wanted to show this girl that I could live up to my boast, and the only way I could think of was to prolong it for a while. She lay there looking at me from bottom to top, and then she said, I'm taking you to my house. She had a 3-bedroom house that she shared with 5 other girls. We did it twice more that night and then fell asleep together. In the morning, I woke up alone, got up and got dressed. I walked down the stairs and found myself in the living room where 4 nearly naked women were fussing about getting dressed. They were all wearing panties and 3 of them were wearing bras, but the 4th, a rather spectacular redhead, had her breasts exposed. None of them paid any attention to me or made any attempt to cover themselves. In fact, the redhead was just standing there so I could admire her breasts, and I knew she was doing it intentionally. The little blonde came up to me and said, Debbie had an early class, and she said to tell you that she would meet you in the library at 3. I spent the next 3 nights in Debbie's bed. By the end of freshman year, I had slept with all 5 of the girls who lived in that house, and none of them cared that I was doing the same thing with the other 4. I spent weekends with Ellie trying to fuck me to death, and weekday nights with Debbie or one of her roommates trying to do the same. Eventually, my grades started to deteriorate, and I was on the verge of dropping out, so I had to cut back on the number of evenings I spent with Debbie and the rest of the girls in the house. I went into my sophomore year with the firm intention that my classes would be prioritized. By the middle of my freshman year, 3 of the 5 girls had dropped out, and only Debbie and Alice, the redhead, were still around. The 2 of them became my constant companions until the beginning of my freshman year, when Debbie didn't return to school after spring break. Alice was my main helper throughout the school year, but she didn't return to school at the beginning of our senior year. I mention all of this because it played a major role in the disaster. It formed an unrealistic way of thinking for me. I saw what these 5 girls were doing and what other girls were doing. I saw what guys I knew were doing, and I knew what I was doing, and I assumed Ellie was doing the same thing at Eastern Michigan. We never talked about things like that when we were together. I just assumed she was just trying to put it out of her mind, like I was. The others meant nothing to me. I was head over heels in love with Ellie, and from what I could see, Ellie was head over heels in love with me. Graduation came, and Ellie and I found jobs in our chosen fields, and Ellie and her mother began planning a wedding. 6 months after our graduation, Ellie and I were married and started homemaking. Have you ever known someone you didn't like but didn't know why? That's exactly how I felt about Sonia. Sonia was a girl Ellie met in her first year at university. They became close friends and never parted after graduation. She was an extremely sexy woman. She had a pleasant personality and a great sense of humor, but whenever I was around her, I felt misgivings. If there was something definite, I could go to Ellie and say, "I don't like her, and I don't want her around, and here's why." But there was no way I could go to Ellie and say I didn't want her around because she was giving me bad vibes. She was a close friend of Ellie's, and I just had to accept that. Ellie and Sonia worked pretty close to each other, so they had lunch together 2 or 3 times a week, and at least once a week they met for a drink after work. A couple years passed, and one Monday night at a friend's birthday party at a local bar, my life changed, and not for the better. The drinks were pouring, the music was loud, and I was partying hard. I was so drunk that I was having a great time, but I wasn't thinking straight. Sonia came up to me and dragged me to the dance floor. I did mention that Sonia was a sexy lady, right? Well, she pressed herself against me, rubbed her bust against my chest. She pulled me to her and kissed me hard. She slipped her tongue into my mouth, and after a long kiss, she pulled me off the dance floor and dragged me behind her into the parking lot. About every 3 meters or so, she stopped and gave me another long kiss with copious tongue movements. My mind wasn't quite clear. Although I wasn't thinking clearly, I knew I shouldn't let Sonia do what she was doing. Sonia pulled me along with her, coaxing me along. "Hurry up, Chuck, hurry up. I've wanted this ever since I met you, and this is my chance." Finally, she led me to her car, dragged me inside, and plopped me on my back in the back seat. She unzipped me and climbed on top of me. "Oh, God, baby, I want it. I really want it," she said. "It's wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. It's just wrong." But I made no attempt to push Sonia off me. She lifted herself up and then lowered herself down hard on top of me. So good, baby. I should have done this a long time ago. I have no idea how long we've been doing this." As she lay on top of me, breathing heavily, I finally realized that I needed to pull her off me and get away from her. But as soon as I had that thought, I heard, "Damn you, Chuck! How could you do this to me?" I looked over Sonia's shoulder and saw Ellie standing by the car, peering inside. Sonia tried to get off me and then ran after Ellie, leaving me in the car feeling like shit. I pulled myself together and headed into the lounge to listen to some music. On the way, I met Ellie and Sonia, who were coming out of the house. Ellie threw me a disapproving look and said, "I'll stay with Sonia. I really don't want to talk to you or have anything to do with you right now." I stood there dazed and watched as the 2 men walked over to Sonia's car, got into it, and drove away. I woke up the next morning with the worst hangover ever. I was alone in bed, so I popped some pills and headed to the kitchen to see if Ellie had put the coffee on, and it was only when I got into the room that I remembered that Ellie wasn't there. And then I remembered why. I had put the coffee brewing, referred to being sick at work, and then sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall. Why in God's name had I done what I'd done last night? I was up to my eyeballs in shit, and I knew it. I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. I had no defense. All I could do was say I was sorry, that I was drunk and didn't realize what I was doing, but that would be a lie, and I was never good at lying to Ellie. It was true that I drank too much, but I knew what was going on, and I knew it was wrong, and I didn't fight it. I knew that if I hadn't been drinking, this would never have happened, but that was faint consolation. After drinking 6 cups of coffee and looking at the situation from every conceivable angle, I realized that my only hope was to get on my knees and beg for forgiveness. It took me until 2 o'clock in the afternoon to work up the courage to call Ellie at work. As soon as she heard my voice, she said, "I don't want to talk to you right now, and I don't want you to bother me. I'll call you when I feel I'm ready to talk." And she hung up. Okay, I thought it might be a good idea to get some rest. I managed to get through Tuesday, and I went to work on Wednesday, expecting Ellie to call when I got home in the evening, but she never did. Half a dozen times I caught myself reaching for the phone, and each time I talked myself into not picking it up and calling her. Best to let her make the first move, I told myself. Don't push her. I don't know exactly when I started feeling anxious. It was probably Wednesday night as I was getting ready to go to bed, or maybe Thursday morning as I was getting ready for work. It wasn't until mid-afternoon on Thursday that I realized exactly what was causing the feeling, and then I began to be overcome with very disturbing thoughts. When I got home that night, the first thing I did was head to the bathroom and open the medicine cabinet. There was nothing of Ellie's makeup in the cabinet. I looked at the countertop and noticed that all of Ellie's makeup was gone. A check of her closet showed that some of her clothes were gone. Ellie came home while I was at work? I didn't think so. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that the bathroom countertop was empty on Tuesday morning. Had the clothes disappeared on Tuesday as well? Had she packed them up and carried them out of the house on Monday? The more I thought about it, the more the fog cleared. I was so preoccupied with guilt and self-pity that I couldn't think straight. Ellie caught her best friend sleeping with me and then dumped me and went home with the woman I cheated on her with. Something wasn't adding up, and I had a very bad feeling about it. I picked up the phone and called Sonia, but no one answered. I tried calling a few more times, but still no answer. On Friday, I got up early and called. Sonia answered, and I asked to get Ellie, to which Sonia said Ellie didn't want to talk to me and hung up. At 9, I called Ellie at work, but as soon as she heard my voice, she said, "Damn it, Chuck, I told you not to bother me. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk to you." "Ellie, we have some serious problems here, and we need to talk about them now." "When I'm ready, Chuck. Not until I'm ready to talk." And she hung up again. I was starting to get angry. There was nothing good about what was going on. I decided that to hell with talking on the phone. I left work early and drove to where Ellie worked. She usually left at 5, and when it hit about 6:30 and she still hadn't left the building, I went inside to look for her. She wasn't there, and I was told she had left work early. I drove up to Sonia's place, but no one was there, and that calmed me down. I called Ellie's cell phone, but no one answered, so I left a message on her voicemail and warned her that if she didn't call and talk to me or get home by 9 p.m., she wouldn't have a chance to come home. I then went home to wait. It hit 9 o'clock and Ellie still hadn't called, so I grabbed a couple suitcases and boxes and started packing. By 11, I had gotten everything I wanted out of the apartment. I threw my wedding ring on the middle of the kitchen table, locked the apartment, and left. Radical? Maybe, but the whole situation was disgusting. There was something wrong with it when she was able to move in with the woman she'd caught me engaging in lewd behavior with, but wouldn't even talk to me. And I wasn't about to let myself be made a fool of. I turned off my cell phone, checked into a motel, and went to bed. Saturday, I got up, had breakfast at Denny's, and then went looking for an apartment closer to where I work. I looked at half a dozen apartments, found one I liked, and signed the lease. I went to a used furniture store to buy what I needed and started checking in. I stopped by Denny's for dinner again, went to a movie, and then headed home to my new apartment. I got there around 11:30 and figured that by then Ellie had probably gone home or was trying to call, so I turned my cell phone back on with the intention of giving her a taste of her own medicine. If she called, I'd tell her I didn't want to talk to her and hung up. At 3 in the morning, the cell phone rang. It was Sonia calling to let me know that Ellie was in the hospital. I asked what was wrong with her, and Sonia told me that she had been raped. When I walked into the emergency room of the hospital's emergency room, Sonia saw me, jumped up, and ran over to me. She was crying, and it looked like she had been crying for some time. I asked where Ellie was, and she told me that Ellie was in one of the treatment rooms in the back of the building. I wanted to go through there, but she stopped me. She told me that the police were with her, and they didn't want anyone to come in until they were done talking to her. "What happened?" Sonia cried again. "For God's sake, Sonia, stop whimpering and tell me what happened." That only made her cry harder. I was about to leave her and go look for someone to tell me something when Sonia sobbed in a voice full of tears. "Oh, God, I never meant for this to happen. I'm sorry, oh God, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done this. It's all my fault. I'm sorry, oh God, I'm so sorry." "You shouldn't have done what, Sonia? What did you do?" More crying and screaming until I finally lost my temper. "Damn it, Sonia, what happened? If you don't stop whimpering and tell me what's going on, I swear to God, I'll put my hands around your throat and shake you to death." Before she could say anything, two men came into the room, saw Sonia and me, came up to us, and asked if I was Ellie's husband. I introduced myself, and they introduced themselves as Detective Stoner and Monroe. Detective Stoner asked me what I could tell him about what my wife had been doing for the past 2 or 3 days, and I said I had no idea. That she left me on Monday and had refused to talk to me since then. I then asked them what was going on. I can't figure out what's wrong. Sonia can't stop crying long enough to talk, and I've been told I can't see Ellie until you're done with her. The two men looked at each other, and there was some sort of exchange between them, and then Stoner shrugged and nodded. Monroe said, "Let's go to the hospital cafeteria, have some coffee, and we'll tell you everything we know." At 1:45, Sonia called 911 to report that a woman was being held against her will and raped. 2 police officers were dispatched to the call, and when they arrived at the address, they found 11 men in a room with a naked woman. They called for backup as the 11 men scattered and 2 more patrol cars arrived. By then, they had gotten a good look at Ellie and called paramedics, who arrived and immediately transported Ellie to the hospital. The case was assigned to Monroe and Stoner, and they arrived at the hospital. They interviewed Sonia and Ellie. According to them, on Friday night, Sonia and Ellie had gone to the Aladdin Lounge to drink and dance. At some point during the evening, Ellie was given a date rape drug, and sometime around 11 p.m., while Sonia was on the dance floor, 2 men took Ellie out to the parking lot and had sex with her in the back of a van. Word spread that several other men had approached the van, and it was decided that rather than risk calling the police, they would take Ellie to an apartment. Once there, Ellie was sexually assaulted until 911 was called. Friday night, until 1:45 a.m. Saturday night, it took Sonia over 24 hours to call 911. Apparently, Miss Talbot thought your wife left of her own accord. She didn't become concerned until your wife returned to Miss Talbot's apartment the next day. She thought Ellie left on her own? According to Miss Talbot, they went to Aladdin's to look for men. She thought your wife had, as she put it, taken off. It wasn't until Saturday at 6 p.m. that she became concerned and went looking for your wife. She found someone who had heard that some guys had gathered at the bar where they had been partying all Saturday afternoon. Miss Talbot got the address, went over and saw what was going on, and then called 911. Did Sonia tell you about this? She said they went to that bar looking for guys to pick up? Monroe nodded affirmatively. I sat there staring at them for about 30 seconds, and then Stoner said that after their conversation, the doctor had sedated Ellie and that I probably wouldn't be able to talk to her until morning. After they left, I sat staring into my coffee cup. It must have been about 20 minutes before I got up and went back to the waiting room. Sonia was still sitting there, so I walked over to her, took her hand, and then lifted her out of her seat. "What are you doing?" she asked. "You and I are going out for some fresh air." And then I dragged her behind me into the parking lot. I dragged her to my car and then pushed her inside and sat behind her. "I want to know what's going on, Sonia. I want to know all of it. And you're going to tell me, or I swear to God, I'm going to put you in a hospital bed next to Ellie, and the 2 of you can share a room. Could I hurt her?" I doubt it, but she didn't know that, and the story got out. It happened one night when she and Ellie went in for a drink after work. They were sitting there having a drink when a girl who knew Sonia from high school approached them. Ellie was introduced, and then the girl and Sonia played catch-up. To make a long story short, it turned out that the girl had gone to the University of Maryland, knew me, and when she heard Ellie's last name, she asked if we were related. Before Ellie could answer, Sonia told the girl that it was just a coincidence. Sonia knew that the girl had been a slut in high school and figured that she was probably one in college. Sonia also knew that I didn't really like her, and if a slut like this girl knew me in college, there was probably some dirt she could use to rub my nose in. A bit of drinking and curiosity got the girl talking about me and the 5 girls we shared a house with. Ellie was furious. It turned out that while I was making a fool of myself and thought Ellie was making a fool of herself, she wasn't. Ellie had stayed true to me, and the fact that I hadn't stayed true to her made her angry, and Sonia was happy to capitalize on that anger. She began to influence Ellie, trying to convince her that she needed to get even with me for my betrayal, and eventually convinced Ellie to do it. They spent a couple weeks thinking about what to do, and what they did to me was their plan. Get me drunk, let Ellie catch me and Sonia hooking up, and then use that as an excuse to let Ellie go out and try a few men, and after she got her revenge, she'd come back to me and tell me she loved me enough to forgive my indiscretion with Sonia. She was willing to let you fuck me just to go and entertain strangers? I shouldn't have had you. I should have screamed as soon as foreplay began, and she would have run up and continued her performance. Why did you change the plan and fuck me? I wasn't lying when I said I'd wanted you since I first saw you. I knew you'd never leave her and that my only chance was when I laid you on your back on that seat, so I took it. And Ellie didn't get mad at you when you didn't stick to the plan? She doesn't know. She saw me on top of you, but she couldn't see everything. I sat there and looked at her. I had no trouble believing what she told me, but I still had a hard time accepting it. And I just had to say, "It's good to see you home, darling. Did you get your wish? You were never supposed to learn about men. All you had to do was think she was too mad at you to talk to you or want to be around you for a couple days." I stared at her, and something told me I hadn't heard everything. "You're hiding something, Sonia. I can see that you haven't told me everything." She looked away, and then she said, "We went out on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and met guys. Friday was supposed to be the last time, and then she'd come home and say she forgave you. So, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday she intentionally acted like a slut, and then Friday she was going to be one again? Come on, Chuck, what's the big deal? You had fun, and she wanted to have a little fun. It didn't change anything. She still loves you." "Yeah, Sonia, but not enough to remember her wedding vows. You know the part where I renounce all others? What I did was done before we were married. With the exception of you two screwing me over, I was a faithful husband and expected to be able to say the same about my wife. If she wanted to play around, she should have done it before she walked down the aisle at our wedding." "What are you going to do?" "I already did. I gave her a deadline to talk to me, and when she didn't meet that deadline, I moved out. I'm meeting with a divorce lawyer next week." "Don't do this to her. She loves you." "She doesn't love you enough, Sonia. She doesn't love you enough, or she wouldn't have done this to me." I got out of the car and went back to the hospital. Ellie was still insured, so I went to the emergency room and gave them the information they needed, then went back to my house and went to bed. On Sunday, I got 2 calls from Ellie and 1 from Sonia, so I hung up on both of them. Monday, I went to work, and around 10, I got a call from Sonia. I answered the phone. "Ellie has been trying to reach you. She needs to talk to you, Chuck. Don't you think you should at least visit her?" "No, Sonia, it's too late for that now." "What should I tell her?" "I don't know, Sonia. Maybe you can discuss your wonderful plan and tell her how well it worked. She's certainly experienced a bunch of other men, and that's what you both wanted, right?" I hung up the phone and went back to work. They kept Ellie for 2 more days for observation. Mentally, Ellie was depressed. I was told that she flinched and shrank every time a man approached her, and eventually they put a notice on the door of her room saying that male orderlies were not allowed in and that the male doctor had to be replaced by a woman. On Thursday, Sonia called me and told me that Ellie was being discharged. "Why do I need to know that?" "So you can pick her up and take her home." "No, thank you, Sonia. First of all, her home and my home aren't the same place. She had no problem leaving me and staying with you, so you pick her up and take her to your house." I went to an attorney and filed for divorce, and 6 months later I was a free man. During the 6 months of waiting for the petition to be granted, everyone in Ellie's family and everyone, except my father on my side, tried to get me to forgive Ellie and reconcile with her. The general consensus was that I was an insensitive cad. My God, the poor girl was raped. Where's your compassion? They all completely overlooked the fact that Ellie targeted herself. She might as well have been wearing a sign that said, "Pick me and fuck me." I told them all that if Ellie had been at a party, drunk and taken advantage of, or if she had been dragged into an alley and beaten, there might have been room for compassion and forgiveness. But Ellie had deliberately gone looking for a man, and it was her own damn fault that she'd gotten more than she'd expected. There were other problems that no one seemed to pay attention to. Who was to say that all the social ills Ellie eventually contracted were caused by her weekend gangbang? They might as well have been contracted during her Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night outings. If Friday had gone the way she'd planned, for one more night, she would have been ready to come to my house, say, "I forgive you," and then climb into bed with me and share everything she'd picked up. Thank you, but no. I didn't need someone like that in my life. Would I miss her? Of course I would miss her. Ellie was a part of my life for more than half that time, and it will be a long time, if ever, before I forget her, but there's no way I could live with someone who did what she did. Epilogue. Ellie made at least 24 attempts to get me to talk to her, but I refused. I finally sent her a letter fully explaining my position on the matter and telling her that there was absolutely no chance of me ever accepting her again. The phone calls stopped, and Ellie made no further attempts to contact me. The police were able to identify the man they believed had slipped Ellie a date rape drug, and they attempted to make an arrest, but the man denied everything. The only witness who could state with certainty that the man had slipped the drug into Ellie's drink had disappeared, and without his testimony, that part of the case fell apart. On the rape charge, the man swore that Ellie was totally consenting, and the testimony of a dozen other witnesses that Ellie had been at the bar and filming men on other nights that week allowed him to render a not guilty verdict. It's too early to say whether Ellie contracted HIV, but she caught just about everything else. Police and hospital medical staff estimated that between 35 and 45 men used Ellie's services from the time she left Aladdin's until police responded to a 911 call. Ellie had to quit her job because she was afraid to be around men. She moved in with Sonia, who, to her credit, showed concern for Ellie. She took her in and is supporting her while Ellie goes through therapy. Hopefully the doctors will help Ellie overcome her aversion to men, and she will be able to return to a normal life.